Good evening, everyone. Okay, let me just wait a little bit for wait for a little bit for people to join. Good evening. Let's just wait a bit, like 5 minutes. Let's wait a bit for more guys to join in. Okay, basically from where we stopped last class, we talked about the history of web development. We talked about the history of web development, and we also talked about the the history of the internet, right? Then we went on to talk about web development as at that time and why reason why JavaScript was created. And we concluded that JavaScript was created to make web pages more dynamic. So from there we also will move on to see how JavaScript solved the problem. And we also look at the different type of I don't know if you can hear me clearly. If you can hear me clearly, you can just leave it. You can just let me know in the chat box. So JavaScript was created to make the web page dynamic and also look at different different programming language, and we expatiated on what programming is, and we basically said programming is writing instruction to the computer to tell the computer what to do and how to do it. And we look at the different how the computer understand the program we've written to it. We made mention of the fact that we have the compiler and the interpreter. So the compiler and the interpreter, they are software that basically perform similar function. What I mean is, once you write a code, the code you have written in whatever programming language it is, you are the only one that understand this code. You as a developer and other you that are, as a developer and other developers are like the only one that understand this code. The computer don't understand this code. So how will the computer understand the code? So we have something called compiler and we have something called interpreter. So the two of them basically they perform the same function. Just that how they perform this function differs. For the compiler will take the whole code you have written. The compiler will take the whole code you have written and convert it to a language that is understandable by the computer, which is ones and zero. So after it's done converting it, then the computer can now carry out the activity, carry out the operation you want it to do. While for the interpreter, for each lines of code I have written, the interpreter will interpret it one by one. So once the interpreter interprets the first line of code, the computer carry out the operation. So the interpreter does its own by moving from one line of code to the next. So that's how the interpreter operates. Then we talk about the different principles, like general principles of programming. There are things we should understand in programming generally, not just JavaScript. We talk about variables, values, control statements, if statements, and what have you. So basically today we diving deep into JavaScript, majorly the syntax of JavaScript. Because once you understand the basic concept, right, in programming, such as how to create variables, how to create a variable, how to create a function, the control statements, the iteration. If once you're familiar with those basic concepts, if you're moving to another programming language, you just need to understand the syntax, right? Because it's still the same thing you'll be doing, but now you'll be making use of syntax. Like it will be a different syntax from JavaScript. And what is syntax? Syntax is basically like if I'm comparing it to English, right? Is let me say the let's say it's grammar. Yeah, because now if I'm speaking English, right, everyone understand English. So if I'm going out, I'll say I am going out. But if I should say I going out, it doesn't sound it doesn't it's not correct, right? Grammatically it's not correct, but you understand what I'm saying. But grammatically it is not correct. So for the computer now, there's a way you have to type in your code to it. So if you so each programming language has its own grammar, something like that, has its own grammatical way of writing expressions, of making statements. So this grammatical way is known as syntax. So basically, between all programming languages, like different programming languages that we have, it's just the syntax that is different. And today we'll be looking at JavaScript syntax. And before we dive right in, the two tools we'll be making use of course, if you are familiar with HTML and CSS already, you'll be familiar with these tools. Basically, Chrome, I mean, a browser, any browser is okay, but I'll make use of Chrome browser. This is the browser I'm using, and also Visual Studio Code, which we serve, which we serve as our text editor. So let's dive right in. So first, we've talked about what syntax is, right? We said syntax is just basically like it's more like grammar in programming for that specific programming language, because each programming language has a different way, has a different syntax. So you can't use the syntax of JavaScript for C; it will not work. So so we'll just move on first. Before I so we'll just dive into JavaScript. Let me share my screen. So before I define JavaScript, before give definition of like JavaScript, okay, yeah, let us see this first, right? Everyone can see my screen, right? If you can see my screen, you can just like leave a comment or leave a like, so I'll know you can see my screen. So basically, I just want us to see this first, right? Like basically, these are like different ways of declaring a variable in different ways of declaring a variables. Like these are ways you can declare variables in different programming language. And we have Java. Java is at the top. We have C and we have JavaScript. The reason I'm doing this is the reason I'm showing you this first, right? Is so I want to like because if I should start giving definition of JavaScript, the only way you appreciate that definition is if you have like exposure to other programming language. That's if I'm defining it in terms like with regards to other programming, sorry, with regards to other programming language. That's when you appreciate that definition. So basically, we'll just look at this. We will see like when we want to define a variable in Java. When we want to define a variable in Java, there is the int, which the int keyword, which signifies integer. Then we have the name of the variable. We have the name of the variable. Then we have the value that the variable will be taking. And also, when we want to define a string in Java, we have the string keyword in front of it, which is telling us that is string we want to create. And we have the name of the variable, my string, and we also have the value we are storing in it. Hello world. If we move to C, if we move to C, we declare for integer, we also write int, which is signifying that it's telling the computer that it's integer we want to create. And the name of the variable is my variable, also the value is 10. For creating a string, we start in C, we write sharp first, which is signifying that this is a string we are creating, and the name of the variable, and also the value. While for JavaScript, we just have the var keyword, and we are not telling the computer if the variable we are creating is for string, if it's for character, if it's for integer. We just wrote the name of the variable and we just store the value there. And also too, when we're creating for string, we use the same keyword var. We wrote the name, we declared the name, my string, and we wrote the value. If you look at these three programming languages, if you look at these three programming languages, you see that like two of them, two is similar, and the one that stand out among the three is JavaScript. In the sense that in both Java and C, we have to declare the type of variable we are creating before we create the variable itself. And if you are confused, like at this moment, if you are confused, it's totally normal. That means like you are learning something new. So I just wanted us to like see this first before I start giving definition of JavaScript. Whilst we proceed, like everything will become clearer to you. So let's close this and let us go to like Visual Studio Code. So basically JavaScript. Okay, from here now we can see that the definition of JavaScript is a weakly. We can say that JavaScript is a weakly typed programming language. It's a weakly typed dynamic programming language, and it is compiled on the runtime. So I'll be taking my time to explain. I will explain what I mean by that. When I say that JavaScript is weakly typed, what does it mean? So now, if you look at these three programming language, you see that when we're creating the variables, we actually tell the program the kind of variable, the kind of value we want to store inside our variable. For Java, we told the program that we are creating a variable for integers and numbers. We wrote int is in the front of it, and the value we store there is 10, which is a number. And when we're creating a string, we told the program that it says that the variable we are creating is a string. And you see string is in front of it, which is telling the program that this variable we are creating is a string, that the type of this variable we are creating is a string, and the value we're storing inside is also a string. So what it means is that, okay, and for C2, the same thing we see. When we're creating a variable, we have to tell the program that, okay, this variable I'm creating is an integer that will be stored inside, and we store an integer inside. And when we're creating a string, we do the same thing. We have to tell the program, okay, this variable I'm creating, I want to keep a string inside it. But for JavaScript, nothing like that. We just use the var keyword and we created the variable. We store 10 there. And next we did, we created another variable and we store string there. We store string there. We didn't even tell the program that, okay, oh, this variable I'm creating is a number I want to store inside. This variable I'm creating is a string I want to store inside. There is nothing like that. The JavaScript program itself, we by background just determine the type of variable we want to store there. We don't need to tell JavaScript that, okay, oh, this variable I'm creating is a string I want to store there. And the reason, if by the time we start proceeding, you see that JavaScript is a very flexible language. And the reason being that when JavaScript was created, it was created with a mindset that, okay, we want this program to be as user friendly as possible. That anyone, even like anyone that doesn't even have a programming knowledge, can easily learn and start working with it. Imagine that you have to create a variable and you have to like, okay, this is the type of value I want to store inside first. So they actually took that out, and you don't need to tell the program, okay, this variable I'm creating is a string I want to keep inside. So when we say that JavaScript is a weakly typed language, that's what it means. It means that when we are creating our variables, we don't need to declare the type of variables we are creating. I don't know if anyone is following. I don't know if anyone gets what I'm saying. I don't know if anyone gets what I'm saying, right? So like when we say that JavaScript is weakly typed, that is what it means. And we say that okay, JavaScript is a weakly typed what dynamic programming language. So let me explain what it means that JavaScript is dynamic here now. So I'm sh- so this is let me just explain what we have here. Basically, this is if you are familiar with HTML and CSS, so you will not have a problem with this. Because this is just an HTML file. As you can see, .html is here, so it's an HTML file. And you have the doc type, the header, meta, title, the head, the body. So these are our script tag here. So I just feel like for anyone who is familiar with HTML, it will be easier to follow through with JavaScript like this. So that's why we'll be making use of the HTML file to run our JavaScript. So imagine now that we created a variable var my name is equals to Benga. Let's let's console log. Let's console log this. Console.log. So okay, if you don't know what console.log is, like it's a way to output things to the user. If you are present in the last class, I talked about input and output. So console.log is a way we can actually is a function that JavaScript provides for us that we can output things out from the program. So let me stop it. Okay. I shouldn't have stopped it. Let me just go like back. So okay. I'm supposed to explain this first. So okay, this like is the web browser, right? And we're not seeing anything on the screen because in our HTML tag, in our HTML file, nothing is there. It's just empty. So we can just write let's just write hello world here. Hello world. So now if you check the file, you should see hello world right here. So if you're familiar with HTML, this will not be an issue to you. So right. So basically our browser is not just for someone who doesn't have knowledge of web development. The browser will just be like a tool just to view websites. But for developers, the browser is more than that. You have some development tools in your browser that when you're developing a site, you're working on a web app. This tool will come in very handy to you because you can actually like do a lot of stuff with it. And one of those things you can do with this is check the console. Because a lot of time when you're working on your application, the errors you'll be getting will actually be displayed in the console. So once you just right click on your web page and you click on inspect, the developer tools will open up and you can navigate to the console here. So now Benga is displayed out here. And what is displayed out here is the what's the variable we declare that we console log. So when we say JavaScript is dynamic, what it means is that values can change during the runtime. Now, we've declared a variable my name is equals to Benga. Now, you can change the value stored inside Benga now. Inside my name instead, you can change it to Oye. And if you console log my name now, if you console log my name now, what we'll get is we'll not get Benga again. We'll get Oye. Okay, let's check it. So what this means is that JavaScript is dynamic. Values stored in variable can change during the runtime. So I've explained what it means for JavaScript to be weakly type. Now I'm explaining what it means for it to be dynamic. So when I was giving you the definition of JavaScript, I said JavaScript is a weakly type dynamic programming language that is compiled on the runtime. So when we say JavaScript is compiled on the runtime, what does it mean? Remember, during our last class, we talked about the two ways by which the computer understands the instructions we have written to it. And one of the way it does that, we made mention of compilers and interpreters, right? We said for compilers, whatever instructions we have written to the computer, the whole instruction first will be converted to the language that the computer understands, which is ones and zeros. Everything, the whole instructions we have written will be converted to the language the computer understands. And when that is done, the computer will begin to execute to carry out the tasks that we have written for it to do. But for interpreters, what interpreters does is that, imagine you have these lines of code here. Imagine you have these lines of code here. This whole line of code. What interpreter will do is that interpreter will interpret, we convert this line of code to what the computer understands. Then once that is done, the computer carry out the instructions you have given to it. The interpreter goes to the next line and convert this again to the code that the computer understands. Then the computer carry it out. What you can see here is that the process of converting the code we have written to the code that the computer understand, and also the process of computer executing the instruction we want it to do, they are both intertwined, in the sense that they are occurring simultaneously. That's what it means that JavaScript is compiled on the runtime, unlike other programming language like Java and C that make use of compilers instead of interpreters. These whole instructions will first be converted to the language that the computer understands. When once that is done, then the computer begins executing it. So, but JavaScript is what is compiled on the runtime. So as the code is being compiled, it is also running simultaneously. So now we've defined JavaScript. If you are lost, right, you can like wait till the end of the class and you can ask your question. So we just proceed. Don't worry, I will explain. If you don't understand what is written here, don't worry, I will explain everything as we move on. So first thing we'll be working on in JavaScript is we'll be talking about variables. And last class we mentioned variables that they are constants in every programming language, whether Java, C, Python, whatever programming language you may have. You always have to work with variables. And what are variables? Basically, variables are they are named containers for our values. And last class I explained what value is. Right? Okay, I will go over it again. Now, imagine you are in a restaurant now, and you go to make an order. You have to speak to the worker that is there, right? So you call the worker that, okay, you want tea, or you want a glass of water. That the language just comes, you want a glass of water. That is the value you are communicating to the waiter that is there. So that is a value. So value are the things like is what we store inside our container. Like 10 now, 10 is a value. There are data that we need in our program, but we can't just have them floating, right? We have to keep them somewhere. So we keep them inside our variables. Why? So that we can easily have access to them. So we can easily like reference them. So we don't have to be declaring and declaring and declaring again. Imagine imagine like I've declared this variable my name, and I've made use of it so many times in my program. Now imagine my name is no longer Gbenga, my name is now Joe. My name is now Joe. Once I just change it here, Joe, it's changing it's changing every other part in my program. But imagine just saying I'm just making use of Joe. I'm just making use of Benga alone throughout the program. Benga. That means if I want to change my name, I have to go inside everywhere I use Benga and be changing it to Joel. But we don't need to do that since we'll be making use of variables. So variables are they are containers basically that are named. They are named containers that we use to store our values. And in JavaScript, we say that the variables that we are creating, they are not typed, right? What I mean they are not typed is what I was showing you earlier. That when you are creating a variable in JavaScript, you don't need to say the type of the variable you are creating, whether it's an integer, whether it's a number, whether it's an array. But for other middle level programming language like Java and C, you have to mention the type of value that you want to store inside that your variable. Like for C now, we have to mention beginning that okay, it's int, it's an integer we want to store inside this variable we are creating. It's a character we want to store inside this variable. But for JavaScript, JavaScript doesn't stress us that much. You don't need to tell JavaScript the value you want to store inside it. You just go ahead and create the variable. And you say, so now, when we talk about variables in programming generally, when we talk about variables in programming generally, the way we name our variable is very, very important, right? So if you are reading through, right, if you are reading through a code that someone wrote, right, you can easily know the experience level of that person by the way the person name is variable. So there are ways we are supposed to name our variables, and as that's what the first thing I'll be talking about, how we should name our variables in JavaScript. So there's something called documentation, and documentation is the aim of documentation is in a way that someone else can read, or you in the next 6 months. When you leave the code for 6 months and come back to it, you can still understand what you have written and you'll not be confused. So that is the whole aim of documentation. And one way you can actually like document your code very well is in the way you name your variable. So we're talking about the naming syntax in JavaScript, and that's the first thing we'll be looking at. So if you are creating a variable in JavaScript, you're going to give your variable a name. The first thing is okay. Let me just come here. If you are naming a variable in JavaScript, use of naming variables. If you're naming of variables in JavaScript, the first rule is spaces are not allowed when you are creating a variable in JavaScript. You can't have space. You can't have space in between it like this. You get an error. You see, you get an error once you do that. White space are not allowed when you're naming variables in JavaScript. Another thing is only letters from capital letter A to Z, and only letters from capital letter A to Z, small letter A to Z, dollar sign, and underscore is allowed. Anything from those you can't do it. The computer will throw an error. If you write and, it will throw an error. You write hash, it will throw an error. But once it's between A to Z, small letter and capital letter, or one or numbers, or underscore, or the dollar sign, anything from that, the ID will throw an error. So you can't actually do that. So first thing is white spaces are not allowed. And that the number two is only letters from A to Z, 1 0 to 9, and dollar sign or the underscore is allowed. Another rule is you can't start the name of your variable. You can't start it with a number. You can't write 7 here to throw an error. You can't start the name of your variable with number. But number can be in between. You can write number in between it. You can write number anywhere else, but you can't have number at the beginning. You can decide to have underscore. You can decide to have underscore at the beginning or have your dollar sign at the beginning. You can't have numbers at the beginning. And also there are some reserved keywords in JavaScript that you cannot use. There are some words that JavaScript have created that has been set aside. Okay, this set of words, you cannot make use of them in naming your variables. Why? because this set of words they have functions that have been predetermined already. They have role to play on the program, so you can't make use of them. And the last rule is that JavaScript is case sensitive. When I mean case sensitive, what it means is that capital letter M and small letter m, they are not the same thing. They are different things to JavaScript. So JavaScript is case sensitive. There are five rules we gave that we talked about when naming our variables that JavaScript cares about. Number one is we cannot we cannot have space in between the name of our variable. The characters that are permitted to name a variable is a capital letter A to Z or small letter A to Z, or you make use of numbers, dollar sign or underscore. Anything from that, you'll be getting an error. Another the third rule is when naming your variables, you cannot start with a number. The fourth rule is there are some reserved keywords in JavaScript. There are some reserved keywords in JavaScript that you can't use. And the last one is JavaScript is case sensitive. Once again, what it means that JavaScript is case sensitive is that you cannot M capital letter M and small letter m are two different things in JavaScript. So if you have a variable now, if you have a variable, my name, and you have another variable, my name, and you have another variable, my name. These three variables, they are three different things in JavaScript. Because JavaScript look at the case, is it upper letter, is it uppercase, is it lowercase? JavaScript put into consideration those things. So those are the five rules when it comes to naming variables in JavaScript. And one other thing we'll be talking about now is one other thing we're talking about now. We've talked about the rules that JavaScript cares about. Now there are things called convention. Convention is just like the generally accepted ways of doing things. If you go outside the convention, your program will not throw any error. It's going to work fine. But there are things that have been done over the years, and okay, we've seen that okay, this is the best way of doing this, and we all just agree that okay, this is how we're doing this. But it does not mean that if you don't follow the rules, the convention, it does not mean your program will not work. Your program will work, but it's always good to follow conventions because there are ways that have been tried and tested. You understand? So we'll be talking about the naming conventions and best practices. So I don't know, am I breaking? I don't know if I'm breaking. So I will go on. So what am I saying? Okay. Basically, the naming we're going through the naming convention right now. So the naming conventions are like the best practices you can use when you're naming your variables. And one of the very first one is when you are giving your variable a name, give it a name that is easy to tell the function it is doing. Now, when you're going to name your variable, don't just give it any weird name. Give it a name that tells the kind of value you want to store inside the variable. If I'm going to be creating, if I'm going to be creating a variable now, it's like it's like you now having in your kitchen, right? You have different containers. You have salt, you have maggi, you have sugar. So imagine putting salt in a container and now labeling the container sweet thing. The salt is in a good container, but the labeling given it is not describing what is there. So imagine I'm in the kitchen, a visitor comes around and the visitor is in your kitchen, you are not there, and the visitor is looking for sugar and he saw the label in a sweet thing. The visitor will be led astray to think that okay, is that is where the sugar that container is where the sugar is. That is wrong. So the same way when you are naming your variable in JavaScript, Always give the variable a name that anyone that comes to your code and is reading through your code can easily tell the kind of value they are storing inside that variable. So imagine I want to create a variable and I want to give the variable. I want the variable to hold my age. So I can just say my age is equals to 12. And I want to create another variable to hold my account balance. Say my account balance equals to 1000. So now anyone that comes to my code, oh, we know that okay, this variable, maybe I'm not using it here, maybe it's down here. First of all, oh, this variable is holding age. This variable is the account balance. If someone needs to edit my code and make some changes, the person can easily make changes. Why? Because the way I've declared my variable is very readable. Now, okay, let's take a look at this example that I have down below here. Now, see the way this person, see the way these two sets of the correct and the incorrect one was declared. If you're reading through the correct one, you have I'm coming. Okay. Okay, no problem. So if you are reading through the first one, which is the correct one, you can easily tell what each variable is holding. Item price in USD, item quantity purchased. So if you are working through this type of code, you can easily make edits here. You can easily tell what the developer is trying to do. But see this incorrect one. You can't know what this person is trying to do here. He just named his variable IPRC. So anyone that comes to the code does not know what does that mean. It does not mean anything, right? So same way, to make your code usable to someone else, always give it a name. Always give your variable names that describe what they do. Another key thing we want to look at is stay away from making use of abbreviation. Don't make use of abbreviation when you are naming variable. Don't say okay, oh, you want to call price, you want to declare a variable for storing price, then you write var p is equals to 12. Like, who will know that this p means price? You are the only one that will know. Someone else coming to your code will know that okay, well, the p that you declare, the variable p is supposed to hold the price of goods. So don't make use of abbreviations in your code. And what I've said before, make sure the name you are giving your variables is as descriptive as possible. You will not only be helping yourself, you'll be helping every other person that will be making use of your code, that will be every other developer you'll be working with. You will be making their work easier because your code will be well documented and readable to everyone. Another thing is always if you're working in a team, have an agreement on the way you'll be naming your variable. So the whole code can look like as if it was written by just one person and everyone can read the code. So let's talk about what variables are, talk about the rules of the syntax of naming variables in JavaScript, and we've talked about the best practices of naming variables in JavaScript. So right now we'll be looking at how we declare variables because I've not explained how to declare variables in JavaScript. I'm just declaring it and making use of it. So how do we declare variables in JavaScript? Let's look at that. Just let me clear this. So now there are different ways of declaring variables in JavaScript. There are different ways. One of the ways by making use of the var keyword. One either by making use of the var keyword. Two, by making use of let. and three by making use of const. And another way is by just declaring a variable. Yeah, the fourth way is by just declaring a variable. So right now, okay, let's start with this. Let's start with the fourth one. So that these are the ways of declaring of creating variables in JavaScript and JS. So the first way is by what? Declaring a variable. By just declaring a variable. So so now you can just go and just write my my school is equals to hi boys. Our ID is not throwing error. And if we should console log this, as I mentioned earlier, console.log is a function in JavaScript, it's a built-in function in JavaScript to output value to the console. So if you console.log my name, so we console.log my name. Let's see what we have. Okay, reference error. Reference, reference error and even defined. Coming. Oh, I mean, if you console.log my school, sorry about that. You console.log my school, what do we have? Forget iBoys. So now, what we can see is we are not making use of any keywords. We're just saying my school. We just call the variable name and we just pass a value to it, and it's working. It's not throwing any error. That's why I say like JavaScript is a really friendly language, a really friendly language. It allows a lot of things. Assuming it's other programming language now, you have an error because you can't just write the name of a variable, give a variable name without even making use of the keywords to create it. No, but this way of creating variables is not recommended because there are some errors with it. There are some it throws some errors. So we will not be creating variables like this. Another way, the second way we can create variables is by making use of the var keyword. The var keyword. You can just say var my favorite food. So when I say keywords, right? Keywords are words. These are a set of words that are reserved by the JavaScript program that perform specific function. And when we want to create a variable, the keywords we can make use of var, let, and const. But the best to use is still const. I'll be explaining why later. I'll be explaining why. So let's see how var works. When you create a variable with var, if you have to create a variable with var, if you have to create a variable with var, what you just do is you call the var keyword, the name of the variable. Let's say we want to create a variable to hold my favorite food. What do you think we should give the variable? Let's say can just give it because we want the variable name to be as descriptive as possible. Just write my favorite food. Oh, I forgot to mention. Yeah, thank God I remember. One of the conventions, one of the conventions in JavaScript when you are creating a variable is you make use of camel casing. So what do I mean by camel casing? Camel casing means that once you are creating a variable that has more than a word in it, like the name of the variable, the name you are giving to the variable has multiple words. The first word will start with a small letter, as we have it here, and the rest of the words, their very first letter, we start with capital letter. So why do we do this? So that it is readable. Now imagine that everything is small letter. It's not very readable like that. You'll be wondering that what's Mafra, what is there? You won't be able to like pronounce the word and remember. And imagine that everything is capital letter also. You also have similar issue. So that's why we make use of camel casing. And camel casing is once you have multiple words, once the name you are giving to your variable has multiple words, the very first letter will be small letter. The very first word is going to be the first letter will be small letter, but the rest of the words, their first letter will be capital letter, and the rest will be small letter. So F here will become capital letter F, and also F here for the second, third words, the capital letter F. So my favorite food is equals to what? Yam and egg. So anyone that sees this, my favorite food, you know what I'm storing inside here is my favorite food. Is as descriptive as possible. It's very, very descriptive. Unlike me just writing food, va, food, or let me or va, or me just writing va, f. So it's equals to yam and egg. And you're not making use of MFF. Like someone just comes to your code, is just saying MFF. What is the meaning of MFF. So the person will not know what's that variable, the kind of value that will be stored inside. So now we've given our variable a very good name. The name is readable and it tells us what the value, the kind of value we are storing inside. It tells us the characteristics of the value we are storing inside, which is my favorite food. So now, what's this var? We've done it here, right? We can come here and see, right? We can declare this variable this my favorite food that we've declared again. We can say var my favorite food is equals to what? One. We can declare it. And this is wrong. We have declared my favorite food before. Now we are declaring it again. And if you should console log my favorite food is one we'll get, which is reinforcing that what JavaScript is very dynamic. Check our console, we get one. But but it's not supposed to be so. We are not supposed to be able to redeclare a variable that has been declared before. We're not supposed to be able to declare a variable just once in our program. We're not supposed to be able to what, redeclare it. So if we should take this out, so that's one of the characteristics of var. With var, you can declare and reassign the value stored inside a variable. Here we will declare the variable with the var keyword and we reassign the value that we stored inside it from what? From yam and egg to one. You even change the type of variable from being a string to a number. And that is possible because JavaScript is dynamic. So if you look at the let keyword, so for var permits us to declare a variable and to reassign the value that is stored inside. If you look at let is a keyword that I feel is a little bit better than than var. Let's still kind of create some kind of sanity when we make use of it in our code. Now, let's create a variable using the let keyword. As I said earlier, keywords are reserved words in JavaScript that has a specific function that has been determined by the program, and we can't make use of this. We can't make use of this keyword. We can't use it. We can't give it. We can't make use of it in our program. In What I mean is that we can't name a variable that we can't name a variable with reserved keywords. For example, we can't say var. It's going to throw an error. You can't name a variable var. You can't use a reserved keyword to name a variable. So let to is another keyword that is used in creating variables. And that is very unique about one thing is awesome that makes let better than var is with let you can actually declare a variable. Let's declare a variable. We also declare my favorite food. Let's declare a variable with my favorite food, and we'll say is equals to what? Yam and egg. Now, if you try to declare this variable again, you see here with var. See here with var, we're able to declare this variable twice. We're able to declare a variable with the same name twice. Let's check if it's possible with let's. So let's come again. Let's my favorite food is equals to yam and egg. What can we see? The IDE is already throwing an error that this is not possible. Cannot declare block script variable my food. So let does not allow us to declare a variable. If we comment this out and we check here now, we check var doesn't throw any error. var is okay with it. But if we check let is actually throwing error that okay, it's not possible for you to redeclare a variable that has been redeclared already. But one thing that let allows us to do is that let allows us to reassign the value that is stored in our variable. Now we can come instead of redeclaring, we can just reassign the value and say my favorite food is equals to egusi. And if you console log the value, console log my favorite food to see what is stored inside. If we check it, we'll see that it's egusi that is stored inside. So we're able to like reassign the value. So if you have been hearing me use the word declare, assign. So the when you create a variable, either with let, var, or const, you are declaring the variable. That's what it means. So this part here now, from here to here, you are declaring the variable. And you hear assign. I'm making use of the word assign, assign, assign. Here we are declaring the variable, and here from here to here, we are assigning a value to it. So with let allows you to what? To reassign a new value to a variable, but it does not allow you to redeclare the variable. Like here now, we're able to reassign a value to it, but you can't redeclare it with let. It's going to throw an error. You cannot declare a variable with the same name twice with let. So we know that var will allow us to redeclare and reassign, but let will not allow us to redeclare, but it will allow us to reassign. So let's move to const, the fourth way of creating a variable. We will check const Let me move up so you can see what I'm writing. Const. Okay, let me comment this out first because we'll still be making use of the same variable name. Const, my favorite food is equals to what? Ham and egg. So here now, if we here now we here now if we try to what to reassign, let's check if we can declare const my favorite food equals to egusi. Or let's still make use of yam and leg. Oh, let's say egusi. So you are getting an error, and once you check an error, cannot declare block variable my favorite food. You see that we cannot declare with const the same way we cannot declare with let. But let's check if we can reassign my favorite food is equals to egusi. But our ID is not throwing an error. That's why I was saying that okay, once you are writing a program in JavaScript, especially when the program you're writing is for front end, you can actually see the error program in the console. Let's check our console. There's an error in our console. It's saying what on code type error assignment to constant variable. So now we have an error. If you click on this part, click. Let's go back to console. This is going to take us to another development which is source. So see the error is showing us that we cannot reassign. That's the error we're getting. But our ID is not telling us that. You can check for errors, check your console. Stored inside the let's inside the const keyword. So I well this is what we'll be stopping today because it's an hour already and I don't want the video to be more than 1 hour basically. So we'll also so as regards that we'll be having the classes twice in a week now as regards just once. And we'll be determining that when we'll create a kind of surface. So we have to like vote for which other days of the week is convenient aside Saturday and Sunday. So between Monday and Friday, we have to pick another day and also pick the time. So basically today, what I just did was I we go through what we talked about last week. We talked about and today we focus on the syntax of JavaScript. Talk about what syntax is, programming language, the same way grammar is to end. It's just a way of knowing if it's just a way of writing correct codes, right? We see like syntax are like grammatical ways of writing correct codes in our programming. And we made mention of what value is. We talked about that in our last class and what variables are. Talk about what they are. And we look at the different ways by which you can declare variables in JavaScript. And before that, we take a look at how different programming language, how variables are created there. And the reason we did that is because we can appreciate the definition of JavaScript, which is that you can appreciate JavaScript because why? JavaScript is a weakly typed dynamic programming language that is compiled on the runtime. And then we explain what those terms means and we look at how towards how to declare variables in JavaScript and the effects of using the different ways. Either you use the var, you use the let, you use the const, or you just declare your variable. So that's all. Thank you.